All right, so I'm going to do a little journey back to the past. I saw a very interesting, well, I didn't see it. PJ Belmonte sent me this little tweet of Alan Poupart and a response by a gentleman named BLT about the Dolphins 2020 draft now that Ferguson's gone. So I'm going to cover that, and just to try to dial in to make sure we understand. Because BLT, actually factually said we had a 66% retention rate with our first round draft picks. And while it feels good on the surface, I want to kind of examine it with looking at the other teams in that draft, not too deeply, but to show you overview what's very, very clear and kind of back up what Poupart was saying. But I also want to show you some other teams that had very poor drafts in 2020, and now those teams, they're contending. And so really the two part of this podcast is to show you it was a bad draft, but 2025, if it turns out to be a good draft and we string a couple together, the bounce back from a failed series of drafts, most notably in 2020, can happen pretty fast. Here's the little tweet by Alan Poupart. Great guy. Does a really great job. With the release of Blake Ferguson, the Dolphins now still only have 2 of 11 members of their 2020 draft class. Tua, Austin Jackson, others of note, Noah, Ignabony, Robert Hunt, Raekwon Davis, Brandon Jones, Solomon Kinley, Jason Strowbridge, Curtis Weaver, and Malcolm Perry. And then BLT said, and I didn't know this is really interesting news, league average retention for the draft picks, 47% first round, 20% for second round, 14% for third round, 10% for fourth round, 7.35% for fifth round, 7.9% for sixth round, 6.3% for seventh round, and 1.25% for UDFAs. Miami has 66.33% of the first rounds from their 2020 retained. I guess the intimation is that we're beating the first round average. We got 66%, but we had 3 first round draft picks, and 2 you would definitely want to stick with. But Jackson really doesn't warrant sticking around. It seemed like it was trying to force the round peg in the square hole. So really, if you think about it, the truth is it's 33% in actuality. Most other teams would have let Jackson walk or had him play for a very small contract. We didn't. We gave him a sizable contract and stuck with him for many years. And so I think BLT's point is overblown. But I want to focus on the retention rate here and show you how, look, you can have bad drafts. You can have bad retention of those drafts. But ultimately, you can recover if you have a few good drafts in a row. And that says a lot about us because, it wasn't very good during a long stretch of these drafts. A lot of the players are gone, and a lot of those players that we stuck with aren't any good. But I want to take a look at this graphic because it will show you that you can bounce back. You can see here in my little graphic, number of players picked in 2020 draft. This is from BLT2. That's why I'm using it. Still remaining with their respective teams. And you can see we had 2 of the 11 top left, and a lot of teams are in that range too. But you got in the red 9 teams that have 0. And so first off, the reality is even if you're not happy with that draft, and despite us having huge capital, we had a better draft than a lot of teams. I mean, 9 teams that have 0 from that draft. Now, the thing is, whether if you really hated that draft, it shouldn't cripple us at this stage because good teams do bounce back. Look at the Commanders, where they're at right now. And they picked up a really good quarterback, but it's not just a quarterback, but they had 0 for 8. Lions, I put a little purple star there next to teams that really excelled since this terrible draft. Lions 1 for 9. They've done pretty good. Saints, they still suck, and they really needed. That's part of the reason why their cap really fell apart. Rams, they've bounced back very good, but they traded for Stafford, 0 for 9. Seahawks, they're mediocre, 0 for 8. Cardinals, they're still in the same, less than mediocre, 0 for 6. And at bottom, you can see the Broncos, not in a red. They didn't get 0, but they got 1 star, but they've bounced back even after with the Wilson deal. Steelers, they've been middle of the road. Texans 0 for 5 in that draft, but they've got Stroud and they've drafted really well. They've bounced back hard. Titans and Raiders, they're still middling, although Titans are probably far less than middling. So, but then when you look at the teams that did better than us, you've got the Bills, 3 of 7, no firsts. That was a very good draft. A lot of it had to do with Tyron Johnson that they picked up. Tyron Johnson they picked up in the 7th round. Patriots, 3 of 10. They had 2 firsts and 4 thirds. So they had sort of comparable ammo to us. Not really, but they've had a lot of ammo, but they did pretty good. Bengals, 3 of 7. They didn't have any extra draft. Colts, 3 of 9. They had only 2 seconds, no firsts. Vikings, 3 of 15. They had actually more ammo than us. We had 14 going into the draft, and then we traded some bits away. They did have 2 firsts, and they got 3 guys. And then the 49ers, they only had 5 picks, and they hit on 3 of them, but it was 2 first-round draft picks. So the reality is, first 2 things. You could totally screw a draft up, or 2, but once you get a couple of consecutive good drafts, you can bounce back quickly. And that should say a lot about us. If this draft is good and the next one and maybe the next one, you can bounce back. That's why I have 2027 set as us. It's not a death sentence. Although having 3 first rounds, 2 seconds, and all the other picks, only having 2 players that you've retained, it showed bad drafting, but also bad retention. So, I mean, no disrespect to BLT. I've seen him on. I think he's a good, was it Bill from Boyntown? But guys, it's a bad draft. There's no way around it. We should have kept Hunt, maybe even Brandon Jones. We should have let Jack. It would have been felt a lot better if we had kept Hunt and kept Tua. But there were other teams out there that maximized their draft capital. They retained those players, and they've done better with less ammo. So, I have to agree with Poupart on this. It was a bad draft. It was a very bad draft. And then you look at 21, where we spent 2 first rounds on Waddle, and he's barely really even getting used. And then Phillips, nice roll of dice, but the injury thing kind of crippled that. And so we've drafted very poorly when we had unprecedented ammo, but that's the past. This draft right now has to be a draft where we're retaining 3 players. We have to retain our guys. We have to set the cap up. So when it comes time to re-sign these guys, we've already diagnosed early, a year or so, 2 before they're about up for their contract, that these are guys we want and we want to extend. That's how the good teams do it. That's how we have not done it. And that's how we need to do it. But if we do it the right way, I think by 2027, we can get out of the ugliness of the 2019, 2020, 2000, maybe 21 draft, and even some of the other ones. But we can bounce back quick. It's been 4 years since this draft, and look at all the teams. Commanders acing it. Rams acing it. 49ers, they did a good job in the draft. Texans acing it. And so that's it, guys. I just wanted to cover this to really kind of not let stuff get out there, but also to show that if you do something wrong in the past, if you do something very right going forward, it can change quick. Don't think in 1 year. Don't think in 2 years. But for me, it's 2027. So let's see if this draft plays out right, and Greer doesn't wet the bed with crazy trades and waiting to the last minute to sign the guys and saying they deserve free agency. So that's it, guys. Little thing here. Hope you enjoyed. Curtis saying, be well, go Fins. Curtis out. Start building your own online sports book today by getting signed up with aceperhead.com service that'll allow you to book action on sports from all around the world.